And it to me, it was really, really a powerful depiction of like, when you get this critical power coming at you, if you find a way to shield that, then you're going to project that less and care and love for the people that come after you in your life. Hello, everybody, to Through a Therapist's Eyes. This is November the 3rd, 2022, when we come to you. Yeah, it rhymed. You see that? That wasn't bad.
Got it. Yeah.
That was definitely not bad. So, hello, we're going to be talking about how to accept yourself is the topic that we're going to be kicking on with. We're going to be missing Kasie, unfortunately.
We are.
Her acerbic wit.
The what?
Her acerbic wit.
Acerbic wit.
That is a
Holy cow.
choice of words.
That is fantastic. What is acerbic?
Acerbic is kind of a biting wit, but not in a negative way.
A positively biting wit is what.
Sharp wit.
Sharp, witty. Sharp and witty or sharply witty?
Oh, sharp and witty and sharply witty.
Okay,
that's
good. Cool. You have to.
Okay.
I love new words. That's a good one for us.
I wasn't quite sure where you're going there.
Hey, you got to understand, being a baby boomer, we had Reader's Digest vocabulary words for our English course from the 7th grade to the 12th.
Wow.
And
Cool.
so
Impressive. Well, I know you've done a lot of academic work and taught and. You're like the professor. He's the pope. He's the professor.
And
he's
she's
the therapist.
Marianne.
He's the preacher. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the professor and Marianne.
I think her name's Victoria, though.
Victoria.
Anyway, we are missing Kasie today, so we've got our routines together. We've got our schedules together. If you've been following the show for a while, we've been kind of adjusting, trying to get organized around, when we record and how that works. And unfortunately, she fell ill, so she wasn't able to be with us. So we have Miss Victoria over there. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm just going to apologize if you hear me cough at all throughout this.
Have you and Kasie been hanging out? No, I'm just kidding. And John, Mr. The Pope, is here with us. How are you, sir?
The Pope.
A pleasure being here.
All right. So think about these questions as we go in the idea of how to accept yourself. It's something that I think a lot of people think about and really get a lot of questions about. Do you really like yourself? Why or why not? That's an interesting question. And immediately you might think, well, of course I do. But dude and dudettes, I'm thinking that there's a lot of us that truly, really struggle on a basement, bottom, foundational level. Also, what makes it hard to overcome the critical self? Because that's something that absolutely blocks us from liking, accepting, and appreciating and celebrating ourselves, right? And then do you know how to achieve this idea of self-acceptance? Because we're going to be talking about it tonight. So Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get personal insights directly from now a panel of therapists in personal time in your car or home, realizes not to deliver your therapy services in any way. Contact at throughatherapist'seyes.com is where you can contact us with questions, interact with us, that sort of a thing. I've been talking about lately, we are switching, or Neil is teaching me adding to our platform of YouTube Live, which is going to be cool. Not available yet. Should be soon. Hopefully soon, somewhat soon. Where you get to subscribe, hit the little blue bell deal. I think it's blue. Neil, right? No, he says no. I don't know.
That's Twitter.
There's
right?
is that the blue bell on Twitter?
I don't know.
Neil's just laughing at our ignorance, John.
TikTok.
Is TikTok blue?
No,
Do we have anything
TikTok
blue with
is not
TikTok?
blue.
How about Snapchat?
Instagram. Periscope.
There's got to be a blue bell somewhere, I'm telling you. I don't know.
I mean, there's a blue check mark on an Instagram, but that's all I can think of.
So, Re-Understanding Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self is the book that I still have out. Popping out a new book sometime, I'm going to say 2023.
Is that the goal you're going to put for yourself?
Oh, yeah. It'll be out 2023
Okay.
for sure. Apple's iTunes reviews are really helpful for us, 5-star reviews, all that kind of stuff. Guys, this is the human emotional experience, which we endeavor to figure this out together. That is the deal here. So why did you say you were excited, Miss Victoria, about the topic? I thought that was cool. Like what and we didn't go into it too much when
I just noticed a piece of like what this episode is referencing, and I was just talking about that with a client this week. But I just think this is such it's such a big thing to accept yourself. And so I think that it's exciting to kind of talk about like the different aspects of that, how you get towards that, what are some of the barriers and the things that prevent you from reaching that.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting that you would say that because sorry, I got distracted there. I wanted to pull up Facebook Live, Neil. If you could pull it up, I would like to check that out on my phone. Anyway, it's funny that you say that because I've had this conversation like 2 or 3 times this week as well. As a matter of fact, it's kind of why I popped the topic. I was kind of like, dang, that's one. And then I was actually putting it on my list of show ideas and whatnot. And I was like, oh my God, it's already there. So boom, that's how we did this one, right?
Yep.
Which is maybe a good transition into the first segment that I want to do. I feel like that in the context of this conversation or topic, is this not a part of the therapy goals that people come into our office with like all the freaking time?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
That's usually the first one. We've got 3 goals that we want to have.
Our intake form.
And it's to accept myself, to like myself, to be able to be free to
be me,
to be me.
Yeah, all that stuff. Well, and even like I have a client right now who we've been meeting since August, and that wasn't like one of her initial goals or one of the initial things that they said that they were like struggling with, and it's just now they're starting to realize like, oh, I think this is what my problem really actually is. Like, I think that I just like am having some self-esteem, some self-confidence issues. Like,
yeah, they've had to dig
Right.
and dig
To get to that point.
to get to
Right.
that point, and so they were doing a lot of superficial stuff, and
Right.
I see that with my clients.
It's funny, right? Because I thought when I was thinking about this, I listed out. I actually got on our intake forms and looked out, and just popped until I started seeing commonalities on, and I've wanted to do this for a long time. Like, what are the presenting problems? What are the chief complaints? That's what we call it in the therapy world, right? But what do people come in that say that they want to accomplish? Is what those things mean. And I listen to these things because if you look at the things that I found listed. And sounds like we're all really agreeing and seeing that, like, underneath a lot of that, what you really get to is this foundational of, like, do I really like myself? And how do I get to a place of self-acceptance and battling through the barriers to what those things are? So here's what I came up with. Deal with stress. I saw that oftentimes
oh yeah,
in our chief complaints. Communication. So look at those things and deal with stress, communication. How do you communicate if you can't accept yourself and be in a good place? How do you cope with life and life around you if you're not comfortable in your own skin? Self-acceptance, and then all the tools that we want to get. So they have healthy coping, anxiety and stress management, right? How do you use skills? How do you even have conversations? How do you learn about the things that are going on if you're not comfortable in your own? Like, that's what you get what I'm saying. Like, this is so foundational.
yeah. And the next one, decision making. Like, that's like making a decision if you're not really confident in yourself and who you are. Like,
It's
that can be
impossible.
tricky.
And actually, somebody literally said, and I put it in all bold there, right? Feeling better about yourself was a specific therapy goal. I thought that was so cool.
Right.
Whoever that was, whoever you are out there, I'm sure you're listening. Fantastic starting spot for what it is that we're trying to do. Same thing with, you said decision making, setting boundaries. That was another goal. Motivation. Feeling better overall about mental health, which is also an excellent therapy goal, by the way. Really cool when I hear things like that. Lower anxiety, manage depression. Understand self. How do you understand self if you're not dealing with this as as an issue. Mental wellness, clarity, focus, life together. Those are, and then it started repeating with a lot of the themes that I started seeing that people come into. Incidentally, just sort of a side note, what do you guys think about the goals you see when people come into therapy? You ever notice things or think about that? Particularly you, Victoria, was seeing some of the newer forms over the last few months, right? Like what people are saying that they want to do when they come into therapy. Because before with kids and schools and stuff, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of times with kids in school, it's just, I'm here because my parents signed me up. You know, like my parents wanted me to see you. Which, I mean, and then I get the occasional ones that are like, okay, I actually know what I need to work on. You know, blah, blah, blah. But I think, I see a lot of like repetitions.
Reputations? You see a lot of reputations? Sorry.
Of the same
It's got a
things.
bad reputation.
I mean,
That's-
Taylor Swift is going on tour. So
That's just-
insert that song here.
Listening audience, as we get to know John, he evidently is the vocal musical
He
person
is.
of the group. I love it.
I don't know. I pick it
It
up.
just pops out, man,
pops
before
out,
you know
yeah,
what happens.
yeah.
I know.
Yeah. But I see a lot of repetition of like the same thing. I mean, anxiety, depression, and they may not label it those things, but like that's what like it is, you know? Like I really want to figure out why I like shake and tremble all the time. Well, because you're probably dealing with some anxiety, like, you know, so I see a lot of that. And then a lot of, I've had recently in like the last few weeks or so, I've had a lot of people that just come in because they want to treat their overall mental health.
I think that's what I'm getting at. I'm glad that you landed there because, John, I'm curious what you see in so far as the length of time you've done this. First of all, 2 points. One, we're on a topic tonight of how do you accept yourself, which is foundational to a lot of the things that you see people wanting to accomplish. But I've noticed this switch, Victoria. It's cool that you landed there because now people are coming in a lot more with like, I just want to figure myself out, like really.
Do you think part of that might be from the COVID pandemic? In other words, pardon?
I would agree.
Yeah, because you basically sequestered in your homes for at least 6 months, and some people a lot longer than that, and they're alone with themselves, and they're looking in and inward, and they're thinking, I don't like myself so much, or why do I feel so empty? And they want to, and they didn't have the opportunity. They weren't busy to fill their lives up with busyness.
It's exploded mental health.
Yeah.
Just exploded mental health issues. But I'm surprised a little bit. You think it's you sense that shift being much more recent, only in the last couple?
No, I
years?
think it's been going on for a while. I think people have felt alienated from themselves for a long time. It just exacerbated or made it more intensified it.
Yeah, I think that's.
But I think you could. I'm so old. I remember, let's say 9/11. In terms of what that did for us as a nation. And,
it's definitely what really the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just it's been a process. I think in terms of our culture has changed quite a bit, and
I guess I'll change my view a little bit because I've seen a progressive increase in people that are really wanting to address their whole lives and improve mental health, understand themselves better. Thus, they're getting more directly at this goal, which is self-acceptance, which was a foundational thing for a long time and what people wanted, but now people are kind of going there progressively more so, maybe explodingly so in the last few years.
And I think I'm going to go back. We live in the age of, back when I was in college, it was the age of anxiety. We talked about that. There were books that were written about this, or the lonely crowd. And so there were people talking about alienation. Okay. And I think it's only increased and it's accelerated. And it's kind of a contradiction, but the more things that seem that you would think would bring us together has actually caused us to
Feel more separate.
feel more separated. Exactly.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Which I think that we'll touch on in shows to come, particularly with the political trauma show that I'm going to re-highlight.
Well, I'm traumatized from that too. So I may say,
thick of it, man.
Yeah.
Doctor, give me the news.
But I think like even on to add for kind of what I was saying earlier is like I feel like I've seen a lot more people my age, like my generation, come in as like a preventative measure.
True too. Yes,
And
you're
so
right.
like, and I mean that brings up a whole nother thing. Like, what do I diagnose you? Like, I mean, I'm sure I can diagnose you with something, but like they're coming in literally so that they can like,
Well,
yeah, but so that they can
DW
literally-
will let you know.
yeah.
Right.
But they're coming in as like I have a kid whose mom literally signed her up because she's like, I just want to take precautions. Like, I just want to make sure that she's set up for success with like dealing with her emotions and
Yeah.
like, all that kind of stuff.
No, I think you're right. I've
Which-
actually done some premarital counseling lately.
Yeah, which I
Yeah.
mean, I still think that leads into this topic of like
That's refreshing.
It's
accepting
very
yourself.
refreshing.
Yeah, yeah, that
It's
is
very
kind of,
refreshing, to say the least. So I do want to also highlight the episode that we did, 51. Although, Neil, I learned something. Maybe you don't have to pick the mic if you don't want to, but evidently, did you know, man, like you can't get to episode 104 and earlier on all of our old podcasts are like not on Spotify and whatnot anymore. Did you know that?
I believe Spotify wasn't around really allowing podcasts at that time, so we would have to go back and retroly publish them.
No,
That would have been something before me.
Is that true?
YouTube's
if
the
that's
same way. I think.
that's interesting. I've had other podcasts where I literally like even on Apple Podcast app, like I can only go so far back.
And that could be them taking it off to put it in a premium section or something.
Right,
too.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I think because it was iTunes originally with you and Craig, I think Spotify was added on later. Because Spotify is relatively new compared to some of the other ones that they
Oh
used to
wow,
have.
you might. I have to look.
So-
Yeah, we'll have to look into that.
So
I
yeah,
was-
that's why. Because like YouTube only has
did
through
not
certain
know
versions,
that.
and Spotify only has through
which is
certain.
important because I'm about ready to highlight episode 51. And so if you can't get it on Spotify before we get to it, our website is really going to be
It's
great
on the
traffic.
website.
Yeah, exactly. What is our website? Throughatherapisteyes.com. So that's going to be where you need to go to.
Through
What did I do, Victoria? What the heck? Or did you just have a coughing spell over there? Episode 51 was the imposter syndrome. And that really fits really well. Craig and I did a deep dive on, does that even exist? What is it? How do you manage it? I thought that really kind of coordinated a lot with what we do.
Well, it certainly captured a lot of people's attention and seems to be something that
The imposter syndrome?
yeah.
Oh,
in many
I've-
things.
It was
Yeah.
very vogue.
Yeah.
Very
And
vogue.
even now,
concept.
I've noticed that more people are talking about it. Like recently, like even on like platforms like TikTok, I've seen like several
The imposter syndrome.
like videos talking about it and saying like, "Hey, this is a real thing." Like, if you're feeling this way, like you're not alone. Like other people feel this way too. I literally just talked to a client about this on yesterday.
Oh, interesting. Really?
Yeah.
So that we may need to redo that. You got your mic. What's up, Neil?
Well, I mean, imposter syndrome is that people find out that you're fake, and you look at social media. Think about all the people that are out there that really aren't real, and so it ties together because the idea is that
fear,
low
yeah.
self-esteem of am I doing things correctly? Am I really
Is someone
as
gonna
smart
find
as I
me
am?
out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so
Well-
it goes hand in hand.
And I think you saw a lot of that with my elderly generation. You'd see people that would be in a lot of competition and they would
Really?
work really hard and they would say, how did I get here? And
I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Then that. Yeah. Say a little more about that. That surprises me. I didn't see that.
well, when I was in high school, we were all that was a long time ago, but we were all competing to be number one. And that was very, very important. Number one academically or athletically. And
Well, I just find that interesting
so-
because with the connectedness that we have and the comparisons that we have now with really the social media and how everybody's really knowing everybody else's business all the time and seeing a little dot on your daggone phone, knowing where your friends are. It's almost kind of like you literally are tracking it constantly as well as trying to compete. So
I think every generation probably has its way of doing the same stupid stuff.
I think
and
that's true.
comparing yourself to other people. Who's the most popular? It's only we've got sophisticated ways of doing it now.
Oh, you're
with
so
it's
right.
evolved.
I'll tell you where you just took me back to, John, is when I was in grade school. It was a horrible thing. So I was probably in like the 4th or 5th grade or whatever, right? And they did these surveys. So we were learning about in math, how to take the surveys and tabulate your findings and do your graphs and whatever. And all that people were interested in is the most popular kid in the class, the most athletically sound person, and that type of thing. So Tommy Burgoyne, love you, man. You were a good dude. We've connected on Facebook, although I'm not on Facebook anymore. He was like, I think, voted the top popular kid or something. And there was this big, and then there was the rest of us.
Well, about 20 years ago.
Didn't even make the list.
More than 20 years ago, maybe 22, 23 years ago, there was a South Park episode about somebody that they would talk about who was the most handsome. The girls, the South Park girls, had said that in one of the...
that were the most handsome? Is that what you
No. The
No,
girls were
talking.
Did you see that episode?
No, I'm just listening to what you're saying.
Yeah, and so and the guy that I think it was Craig or not Craig, who was the one? Craig was determined by the girls to be the most handsome and popular. That was a character in South Park, but the boys, none of them were on that list, and so they were like crestfallen. And their self-esteem just went all the way to the bottom.
Okay, right. I mean,
that was late 90s.
Yeah, I think I can see that because, isn't that a major challenge, in understanding what your place in the world is in relationship to other people? And I hadn't really thought about that in my list, actually.
And Tommy Burgoyne, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But boy, that pressure that you got is not a new pressure that we put on, people. That's age old, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we had that. I had to measure up to Tommy Burgoyne somehow to make it on the list some way. And, gosh, that's so unrealistic and difficult to do. I mean, he was awesome at basketball. I wasn't yet, anyway. I'll say. Yet, just to protect my ego just a little bit. So let's switch over to that. That's a good transition, John, to what are the barriers? I had the chance of pre-thinking this, of course, but what do you think really leads into some of the things that really prevent us from getting at a place of feeling acceptable in our minds or, comfortable in our own skin and okay with ourselves? And I'll start us off because I have one that I think is so solidly, clearly in my mind, head and shoulders above the rest of the things I was thinking about.
What is it?
Incidentally, we have awesome show links on this show to check out a couple articles that I think will help you think about these things. But it was one of the conversations that I had about this topic this week, and it's having a critical person in your life.
Okay.
Right? Like
other than yourself.
When you have a critical person in your life that just diminishes things that you do, feeling that you do things right, like coming at you with feedback and you could have done this that way, you could have done that this way. Like, I really wish Kasie were here because I'm going to quote her, and I'd love to hear her kind of go into
Right.
this quote that I think is the bomb from her. And the quote is, you don't stop loving the person that's critical to you in your life. You stop loving yourself.
Wow.
And I think that's her own thought, her own quote. And I want to credit her with that because isn't it brilliant? Right?
Pithy.
It's
pithy.
Pithy. Oh, we're back to that
you're
word.
Gonna have to explain what
This
that
different
means.
word.
Oh, it's a different word.
It's concise.
Okay.
Pithy.
Pithy.
Concise. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So in other words, she said paragraph fulls, and just with
Right.
one
In like
sentence.
one sentence, yeah.
Right. Right. And I don't know about y'all, but that's what we say in South, Neil. Y'all.
Y'all.
That just came out, didn't it?
It means you all.
Or Ewans, I guess.
I see this all the time. I think it's a very, very powerful component of something that destroys, like a cancer within, the insecurities that we have get created by a serious level of critical sources in our lives, especially when you have someone so close to you as to having, this go on. But, being stood up, dating, the tough things we were just talking about with listing
Right.
things out from our peers. The peer pressure doesn't end when we're adults. We get information from all sorts of people around us that we want to do things differently. We should have done this, should have done that. It's a key word, right? Like, I don't know. I could go on a rail with this.
Do you think that that critical person in your life, do you think that they do that to others because someone is doing that to them?
hurt people?
Like how they say people that bully are usually also being bullied, but like it's usually like a
Or they're playing tapes from years ago, and in other words, things that they received when they were children, and they
Right.
received a criticism, and the person sort of internalizes it so much that the person becomes overly critical of, let's say, another person that they love, and they think they're
Absolutely.
doing
they're projecting it on
Yeah.
someone else. Yeah.
That's a key term, projection. Go further with that, though, so people know what that is.
Well,
That's
projection
a-
is just where you're like how like a projector like takes something from a screen and makes it bigger onto like a wall or something. It's kind of the same thing. You're taking something that you have and you're pushing it on like someone else or on other people.
It's key.
Yeah.
Really, really a powerful reality that is a normal thing that we do in life, by the way. But so we all have elements of this. But boy,
Right.
when that happens intently, that is a powerful reality.
And I'm also thinking that if a person has imposter syndrome or they're having self-esteem issues, their superego is getting into Freud.
Oh, yeah.
Fraud,
Yeah.
Freudian.
Going back to Freudian and
Superego
Adler
is
stuff.
overdeveloped and not balanced, and their ego itself is not developed, and so it's not
Indeed.
balanced
Yeah.
out. So, and I think that may be part of an issue with them. In other words, they judge themselves very critically.
It just
Yeah.
kills self-esteem.
It does. And
It just
yeah.
crushes, seriously, a person's soul inside yourself when you're trying to feel good about yourself. Like, I feel like this is a tip-top number one, no doubt, like the biggest part of what prevents us from feeling good about ourselves.
Well, and I think that people that have that critical person in their life don't realize that that's what that person is doing.
No, they don't. Good point.
Until they come here or until they come to therapy and the therapist points that out or like someone else points that out,
Right.
like a family member, someone
They're
that's
just correcting
a third-
me. They're
yeah.
just parenting me. They're just,
Yeah.
helping me.
And
out.
usually that person is going to
Or-
make an excuse for, oh, they're just trying to help guide me or they're trying to, help make me a better person. But
Because
then,
again,
like,
we don't stop loving the person who's criticizing us, Kasie says. We stop loving ourselves. There was an awesome meme that really drew this out. I wish I had it. We put it on the show notes because, boy, it's a powerful one where it's just a picture, right? So if you can imagine this, I'll try to draw it out. There's this man on the left who's standing up and he's just shouting, and you could see the depiction of the stuff that they're shouting at this younger adult man, and it's a loud picture of aggression. It really, you could feel it. And what this younger but adult man is doing is holding a shield, so that he's kneeling down, and in front of the younger man is a small child sitting on a chair, and presumably watching a TV program or whatnot. And to me, it was really, really a powerful depiction of, like, you know, when you get this critical power coming at you, if you find a way to shield that, then you're going to project that less and care and love for the people that come after you in your life. And obviously that would be the grandson, right? Did I do a good enough job with that?
I was going to say that kind of transitioned into what I was going to say a barrier is.
What's that?
Is that I think a barrier is when you don't have people to, like, role model that, like, whole thing of self-acceptance and everything. So, like, when you're that child, when you are, you know, a kid of any age, and you come from a home where your parents are not modeling self-acceptance and, like, self-love and, you know, all those things, then it's going to be hard for you to, like,
become generational.
Yeah.
So the bravest thing that somebody could do sometimes is to come to a therapist's office and be able to talk and take that first step.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I agree. Totally agree.
And I'm also seeing that image because I'm thinking about that may be part of the conflict that goes into that all three of those people can be represented in one person. In other words, they might have the voice of an angry parent or a teacher or a scold or somebody or a bully, and they are trying to be able to fight that and do that, and then the person as a child might be able to say, okay, this is a new life. I'm going to carry the wounds and the scars and the battle scars from receiving all that abuse, but it doesn't have to go to this other part of myself, which is growing.
It's a powerful gift.
Yeah.
It's a powerful gift when you find a way to change the progression of otherwise what you were talking about, Victoria, with projection and the generational reality.
Yeah.
Doing onto those that you love what was done to you so that you're not a hurt person hurting people. Because that's what we do. And guys, listening out there, if you're thinking, look, I don't do this. This is not me. Guys, I hear the laugh.
I'm laughing.
Victoria?
I'm not my mother.
We all do this. This is something that happens naturally, automatically, just in being like who we are as humans. So this is pretty universal. Some do it more than others.
Right.
And the powerful gift that you give is, like you say, John, arresting this process. So, you know, critical people in our lives do not have to determine how critical we are to others, but it is if you don't get purposeful about changing that.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that's the other thing, and that is people don't have the self-examination. And part of therapy is to be able to help you find that. So if you have someone that was very critical of you as a child, and you're raised with a very negative self-image, you don't like yourself, or you say I'm too fat, or I'm whatever, how you see yourself, you're actually seeing yourself at that age, I believe, and you're 7 or 8 years old, and you are very vulnerable. You have to realize that you are gifted, you are an adult, and you can be powerful. And that's not a false self-esteem. That is just growing into your maturity.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got Cass that says the barrier analogy was great. Such a protection, and she says such love. I mean, yeah, Cass, absolutely right on. Did you see Adam's kind of like put him on video. Hopefully we're on video, by the way.
I was just saying, like, kind of. Okay, so I was on TikTok earlier today, and I saw a video of this mom and, like, her toddler, and they're making, like, their little coffee or whatever drink. The kid's obviously making, like, a kid-friendly one. But she spills the chocolate milk.
Oh,
goes
gosh,
everywhere.
yes.
Doesn't get a drop of it in the cup. And
Right.
the mom is calm. Says, says, that's okay. Like, and they continue on. Does not make a big deal about her spilling it. Like, whatever. And someone stitched that video and brought up, and she was like, why did I have such an issue? Like, if this were me, like, my first thought was that my mom would have beat my behind.
Right.
And so, and then she said, now I think about every time I spill something as an adult, I become extremely mad at myself because of kind of how she was raised, like
how that
you spill
plays out.
Yeah,
In your,
and so I think that can kind of correlate to self-esteem. Like when you're growing up and you have these things constantly, like you're not good enough, you're not this, you're not that, be better, be this, be that. Then when you, as you become an adult, it becomes way harder. I mean, it almost becomes like second nature. Like when you know, these negative thoughts, all that kind of thing.
The relationships that we have truly are very important in this topic. I think we can agree, judging by our comments. Right? Like, I don't do a lot of inner child work. I'm really hearing now, kind of looking at how life is like and how you want life to be like. That's where I focus, and I tell people that on the first session every time. But this particular thing, and think about it, it's one of the foundational things. Like, those early relationships are really profoundly important when we come to this. Because as you were talking, Victoria, I was thinking and playing off of that, you know, talking about a gift that you can give, John, that you were talking about. You know, I heard a pastor years ago shared the experience that he had, that he did exactly the same with his son. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that his son will do with his son. Because this guy came home from wrecking the car. Mm-hmm. That dreaded conversation with Dad.
Right.
Dad, I wrecked the car. Those are horrible words for anybody to say, man or woman. And you know what? We probably all said them. He said, my dad grabbed me by the ears, pulled me close and said, son, I love you. We could replace a car. I cannot replace you.
Right.
Bravo.
And I know, right?
Yeah.
And he said what that did for him was wonders. And of
Right.
course, as I said, he did that with his son. And
which that's the kind of thing
huge.
you hope to kind of pass on.
Right.
Instead of the more negative. So.
What do you mean you broke the couch?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why do you spill the milk? What is wrong with
Right.
you that you're not paying attention and you're never on point? Like, oh my God, how many? I can just rattle off all these criticisms.
Oh yeah.
And they just see failure.
I
Mm-hmm.
am.
Yeah. I am a failure.
Yeah.
I'm worthless.
I'm not good enough. These messages are poignantly built into our worldview about ourselves. And what we try to do in therapy is rewire that.
Right.
And we're going to get to that with the segment for sure about how do we manage this. But let's move on a little bit. The second one I came up with was insecurities, which is along the same lines. But boy, we could spend a lot of time on this as a barrier to what leaves us to struggle with finding self-acceptance. We spend a lot of time on abandonment and engulfment as primary insecurities, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because I do follow the EFT model. Think about it. Abandonment insecurities and engulfment insecurities, feeling judged for the engulfment versus feeling good enough for the abandonment, or feeling valuable for the abandonment people and not meeting other people's expectations versus, being too emotional, right? Like the engulfment and the abandonment and the way that those things work. I've worked with that model a lot, guys, and it drives our day-to-day interactions and gets driven more and more as our lives go on because we search out for these fears, whether being devalued or whether being criticized from abandonment and engulfment respectively, and we find them over and over and over again, and it it just perpetuates itself. It cyclically gets wider and wider for us if we're not purposefully managing that. And by the way, there are some healthy people out there that do that as a natural course. But there's the other of us, probably in that camp on a lot of ways, that don't catch those things and just have it build and build and build.
Right.
And until you really catch those insecurities, which is part of what we do in therapy, right? To reframe them and re-kick at them, right? Like, how big is insecurities as a barrier to feeling acceptable?
Well, I think it's a huge barrier.
Oh, I'd agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
I mean, when you have something that you don't like about that you're insecure about, it's definitely going to prevent you from being able to accept yourself.
Comparing ourselves, right? Others
Yeah,
with body appearance and job security and being cool enough and being productive enough, and lots of being enoughs come into these realms of insecurities.
Yeah, I have a client that is wonderful, just absolutely wonderful, but he compared himself unfavorably with his siblings.
Oh,
And,
yeah, sibling rivalry.
Oh
for
my
sure.
goodness, and it's really hard for him to see himself as someone that is very talented, worthwhile, and part of that is there's that sense of emptiness that he has to be reassured. And part of my task, I think, is to help him be able to see his worthwhileness, that he could find and identify those strengths that his siblings don't have, his adult siblings don't have. He is unique and wonderful.
Absolutely. And this is a natural thing, which makes us stronger and makes us better. So, I don't want people to be too wild about like, oh my God, this is damaged me for life. No, it also makes you stronger, with siblings and with families and, parents that give us, correction and all of that. But yeah, that can really go, like when I was listening to you, I was thinking of my older brother.
Yeah.
Oh man, like I can get into some touch. I love you, Ronnie. You're an awesome brother, and we're so much better now than we were. But boy, I was 4 years younger, trying to keep up and getting just, pounded physically as well as emotionally in a lot of ways.
Academically.
Oh, I crushed
him. My brother crushed me, but in math, and Mrs. Tinsley said, "Well, why can't you be as smart as your brother?" Mrs. Tinsley she was teaching calculus.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But I think something also that people need to realize that like self-acceptance is like a lifelong journey. Like I think it's things like you have to
point.
like it's not like how I tell people, if you have anxiety, like you're going to pretty much always have anxiety, but you're going to become better with using coping skills, and like it's going to become easier, it's going to become natural, like it's going to become where that anxiety is still going to be there, but you're going to be able to cope with it better. So like self-acceptance and loving yourself is, I mean, it's going to be a battle all the time. Like there's always going to be things that kind of
you're always becoming. You're always becoming.
Right.
We're on a journey.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's two excellent points that you just made. I'm glad you brought that in our conversation because, people do have a little bit of a myth about, hey, and when I get there, I've arrived. I'm good to go.
Yeah, and that's just not how it
is.
No.
Life will crush you at some point, even when you've gotten secure and built that up. I mean, it's like such an awesome part of this conversation.
Yeah. Well, and you just change your viewpoint. Like I saw years ago, there was this post that went around on Facebook of this girl had this photo taken of her, and she's in shorts and she's like walking with her friend. They're like smiling, laughing, like you could tell they're having a good time. And she looks at that photo, and the first thing she sees is like the cellulite on her thighs.
Right.
And so,
oh gosh,
and so instead of thinking about like, she wrote this whole long thing about it, but instead of like thinking about, oh, I'm having the time of my life, like we had such a great night that night, like look at our smiling faces in this photo. It's such a great photo. Like she talks about how it took a lot of work for her to look at that photo and not see the cellulite first. Like, she had debated whether or not she was going to wear shorts over pants, like getting ready for that night, kind of thing. And so like,
and you know what?
So she focuses on that. Yeah.
Well, and so it took a while for her to then look at that picture and remember the good times that they had that night or whatever they were doing, instead of looking straight at like her cellulite on her thighs.
And you know what bothers me about that is and I don't diminish that at all, because I think height and body size, body width, hourglass figure, makeup, hair, I mean it goes on and on and on. I think women have gotten recognized for crushing themselves with beauty and image and getting insecure about
standards.
that. Here's my point: dudes do too.
Oh, 100% believe
You heard
that.
John, right?
Oh, yeah.
You heard John.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get that kind of credit, though, or I think I want to say maybe there hasn't been as much progression on relaxing that, whether a person does or not. Like I feel like women have been better at helping at least to diminish that and whatnot. I feel like we're still in the dark ages and people don't even like to recognize we do it. For dudes, for men, for your husband, for your
That you
boyfriends.
like look at yourself and
Yes.
see all the things that are
Absolutely.
And
quote, wrong.
we have the macho.
Absolutely.
And so we don't talk about this.
Hell
Right.
no.
No, we tease
Shove it
one
under
another.
the
We
rug.
jab. We jab.
Jab.
We,
You're right.
You know, figure out the best cut downs we can give, and it's horrible. It's just missing the point. Tears us down.
One of the things that my grandmother did, and she was born in the 19th century, shows how old I am.
Okay.
Okay. But she would say, when you were a little baby, John Nelson, and those beautiful brown eyes, and she would look at my toes and my fingers and said, this is perfect. This is God's creation.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we don't hear that enough.
No.
We
We
yeah.
don't.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is my intention to raise my son to be able to like look at himself and love himself.
Yeah.
And like, I
It's-
literally this is so weird that you picked this topic because like even yesterday, I was like talking to myself about how like he could do no wrong. Like I was just looking at him like playing in his little playpen, and I was like, he is perfect. Like he can do no wrong in my eyes, right? Like there is not like I look at him and I don't see any even like his birthmark, like nothing about him.
You're seeing him in all his potential of what he is becoming and
Right.
can become,
Which is same
And
thing.
is.
in his potential and is.
Yeah. And he's only 7 months. He's 7 months and a day old. Like,
Isn't that
And-
wonderful?
And you know what's it is wonderful, and Victoria, I applaud you for that. That's super cool that you can identify that. And in addition, I will say for parents out there, that's hard to do
it is.
because what
Oh,
you're
I'm
gonna
not saying it's easy.
and it'll get harder and harder and harder as you move through a lot of the different
Mm-hmm.
stages. I would argue, honestly, about now is probably a relatively easy thing to do because they're
Right.
cute, they're babies, they're
Oh,
lovely,
everything
they're
he does
innocent,
is
they're
stinking
perfect,
adorable.
right? And that will change, yo.
Oh, when they're in their twos and threes and they
Threes are way
learn-
worse than twos.
No,
No, it's definitely
yeah,
terrible threes.
Yeah,
And you
You're
have
right.
this battle that gets created and this grinding that gets created. And as a very natural course of progression, yeah, what happens to self-acceptance?
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It's a lifelong thing. Like you're
Right.
gonna hit these points where it's gonna the road is gonna get bumpy.
Neil, did you have a thought? What you got? I just noticed the microphone.
I have a question about. So one of the things that Victoria brought up is that one of the critical things is you have to be better. How do you deal with self-acceptance, but still the idea of always improving yourself? Because that's a big thing where you see that, like, I may not be perfect, but I'm going to try to be better the next day. Like, you have to have that goal to strive for something. Because I feel like if you
I
if
love
you
the question.
settle-
Yeah.
I'm going to push a pause to us because honestly, the very first one that I have in my brainstorm about how do you overcome this and how do you manage things actually directly addresses that. To me, it's the self-esteem builder activity that I've talked about on the show. So it's a perfect question, and I think we'll address there. But let's get through this a little bit more. Is there anything that comes to y'all's mind as far as barriers? So I think we spent a lot of time on insecurities and a lot of time on a critical source in your life.
And
I
not
th-
having a model.
I think those are really the two biggest ones. I'm curious if you guys agree with that. And then not having a model. I also thought about trauma experience, possibly divorce or unsettled family relationships. I think is
Yeah.
a big thing on
Yeah.
the list. How about this? A guilty conscience. When you have a guilty conscience,
Oh, I have
which is
such a
something
guilty
we do. You don't have that at all.
No, I do. I can't do anything without feeling like
Like we've done something wrong.
I accidentally took a pack of gum one time and I returned it because I felt so bad.
You are a
Well,
rule follower too.
Bravo. That's wonderful.
And
Well,
the CVS
do
guy
you have
was
a
like,
point by
most
that,
people
John?
would have
What-
taken
No.
this.
Okay, no, not really.
I
Yeah.
was
Yeah, I think that's an issue that comes up about things that you've lived through and then how you live that and relive that and he'll hold guilt about yourself and then how you were taught. Somebody was talking about teaching. I thought it's important to identify how you're taught to interpret because you can have teachers that teach you in your life to negatively bias your interpretation or positively bias your interpretation.
agree
The
with
other
that.
Learned
the other
reality.
math teacher that I taught my brother too, and her name was Mrs. Patterson, and she helped me learn how to do quadratic equations. And I never thought I could do those, and she believed in me. And the difference was Miss Tinsley and Miss Patterson were both wonderful, wonderful teachers, but Miss Patterson drew out my strengths and built on that and didn't compare me negatively to another person.
Yeah. And again, what a gift.
Oh.
Yeah, it is a gift.
You know, what a gift.
And so she was seeing all the potential that I could have for me. And so that's one of the tough things that we have to learn in life is that, yeah, there's always going to be somebody that's better in terms of like in athletics or whatever. But there's something that we can offer uniquely in our own lives.
We're
Well-
seconds away from the segment of how to build up the self-acceptance component, but that's one that I don't know if it's on my list or not, but you know, do you have people around you? Realize you can have people around you. Actually, I know it's on the list where they give you positive, loving, guided feedback about you, and how crucial it is to have those people that teach you that. We used to have teachers that do this. I think that those relationships in the schools have been diminished in a lot of ways.
I was about to say, I could go
Unfortunately.
on and on
there's-
about how
Victoria's
like,
jumping in her skin on
about
that,
how
right?
So many, because a lot of the clients I had in school were behavior issues. And I think a lot of times it's because that was the sole focus instead of using the kids' strengths to help them
Exactly.
in class to
Build, grow.
help them build and grow and get better and accept themselves more. Like the teachers just focus on the negative behavior and then they just beat on that, and then they and then before you know it, the kid is off to a specialized school for
Yeah.
troubled kids, or or they're constantly in my office, or they're constantly getting ISS or OSS, or whatever it is. And I think it's because a lot of times the teachers, and I know they have a lot going on, so sometimes it's not a fault of their own, but they focus on the negative, and they like, why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? Why aren't you like the other classmates? Why can't you sit still like this?
Comparisons and crushing.
Yeah, I could go
views
on
of-
and on and on about it, but I
Absolutely.
think that is a major.
And we get that in the workplace as adults too.
Oh, yeah.
We have a Facebook Live quote or comment that says, "Lifelong goal is always to learn and improve." I mean, we get a lot of agreement about
Yeah.
that. So let's move on to how do we build this. Or actually, we don't have time for the section that I thought important. Conditions in mental health have an impact on this, so we're not going to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, we
But-
could honestly do a part this episode and a part two.
yeah.
We probably could and should. We'll cover it again in another from another direction and probably have already if I were to have done a good review on all of our shows, because again this particular show is so foundational.
It is,
you
it
know. But I've made the distinction on the show before that people do have clinical conditions, and it drives me nuts. John, I think it's gotten a little bit better, but people are afraid to label on our field. They're afraid to diagnose conditions in our field, and I don't understand it. And honestly, it bothers me. Therapists listening out there, listen, that is a part of our job. That is literally a part of what we're trained to do, and very important that we get into doing that, I think. And I know it's a little controversial. And I don't base what we do on a condition and all that. It's not
You're not
ideal.
talking about pathologizing someone. You're
Right.
using this as a tool in order to help just make it clear as it can be.
What your
to the-
body's doing.
What the body's doing. I mean, there's some things like bipolar, for
Yes.
example. That's an organic thing that's going on
Yes.
inside of you. It's
So
a
is
biochemical
OCD.
We're
OCD.
just putting a name to it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I get
And
it.
I think people are terrified in our field to do that. I don't really understand it. I really don't understand it.
I think. I mean, this might be a whole nother
I mean, I understand
conversation.
the
yeah,
arguments,
but I
right,
mean, a
but-
lot of people, and I get this a lot in schools too, is they were like a lot of parents would be weary of of me diagnosing their kid because they quote unquote like didn't want that diagnosis to follow them throughout their life, especially when it came to something like anxiety or ADHD or bipolar or something like that. And and I get that, but I also get like what John says is true. Like people that have ADHD, like
that's a biological,
their brain is different. Like
reality.
literally,
it's wired different.
Yeah.
Their wetware is different, and there's a survival strategy I think nature gives us for ADHD people.
I love that you
Yeah.
guys are joining me and nailing this, man.
Yeah, and so I mean, I'm totally on board with what John's saying, like, and what you're saying too. I mean, I get it. Naming some of these things is literally just putting a name to something that you're already experiencing.
All right, we got to get off of
Anyways,
this though.
yeah, sorry.
But because I love the energy on that.
And anxiety is a state of being.
Yeah.
Right.
In the 21st century.
So what I have created in my brainstorm was where we go with how do we really create this? So what are the solutions? And I lied. I put A1 on, if you see on the list in the show notes, I created it. I changed it because I wanted to have self-care as the first on the list.
Yeah.
Self-care I talk about as the cornerstone of mental health. Being able to prioritize yourself, to make that a priority for fun, relaxing, engaging activities that are like hobbies. They're not self-destructive in any way, and they're not work-related tasks.
And
That's
that are
the way
for you,
yeah.
not for someone
Nurturing.
else.
Nurturing.
It's nurturing to yourself, allowing yourself that time and that space to disengage, I think, is crucial to mental health and therefore crucial to a foundation thing like accepting ourselves, right? This is huge.
Yeah.
But then the other thought I had was A1, that is this the first one? Which goes back to your question, Neil, earlier in the show. How do you want to improve yourself, which we want to do that all the time, at the same time as accepting yourself with the idea of I have flaws? Is that kind of what you said, Neil? Yeah. And I think this activity that I've created, I don't know if I created, I think, but somebody probably did it before me. That's happened to me before. You look at a list of things about yourself and you take them all off the list that are negative. And usually you just start out with one thing that you like about yourself. I'll start out with clients. And then you choose one thing that you don't like about yourself. Great. Mm-hmm. You celebrate the one that you do. That's a priority. That's important. And then you look at changing the one thing. Only one, not 5, not 10, not 20. People usually can list those very much easier than the things they like about themselves. Just the one. And then you change that. And you work on that. And you manage that a little bit. Maybe days, maybe weeks, maybe months. Could be years. Then you have 2 that you like. I mean, you move on to choosing only one more. And so on it goes to where 3 becomes 4, and you're celebrating 4 things that you like, that you've changed, that you're enjoying, that you're celebrating, and only 1 that you don't like, that you're working to change. And if you do this for a year or 2, and you're really on board and on point with it, what do you think happens after you get 10 to 1?
Yeah.
Chris, this is a different exercise, but there's that aspect. It's really hard for people to name one good thing about themselves.
I know.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, isn't it?
But we do it.
In my assessment, like that I do with new clients, one of the questions I ask is, tell me your strengths. And I swear, it hits them out of nowhere. They're like, like
it's amazing how people struggle with that.
I don't know. Like, I mean, and it takes, sometimes they're like, I've literally had people say like, I don't know. And they literally cannot tell me one good thing about themselves.
That's so common.
One thing they're good at.
And makes me so sad because
I mean, which is why I include it, because it does get them thinking. Also, too, like, I mean, then there's a whole nother conversation.
Let me pop you, see if you can answer the question super quick. What are 3 things you really like about yourself?
About me?
Yeah,
I'm a good mom. I work hard, and I take really good naps.
I love it. I love the third one exactly. I'll say, because I didn't think about doing this, I just did that in a moment. I'll say that I'm really persistent. I'm very doggedly persistent. I'm also flexible in finding different ways about doing things, and I like to laugh, and I like to make people laugh. Those are What are you, John?
I'm a good husband, a good father, and I am dogged. I am an advocate. I will fight for a person for something to help
For a cause.
For a cause, yeah.
And
I think we did good with that.
My
right?
favorite
That's-
twist to add on to that, I will say, is a lot of times when people give me strengths that don't benefit themselves. Does that make sense?
No,
they give
what?
they give me strengths that benefit other people more than themselves. Like,
I got what you're
I'm a
saying.
good
I
mom.
see what you're
Okay,
saying.
well,
Great, you do that for your kid.
Yeah, like that's good for my kid. But like, so
What
I
about
mean,
you?
I had one
With
person that
home
was
ed.
like profounded. She was like, I've never even thought about. Like, she listed
That's
all these
interesting.
good things, and literally everything she listed was like,
Codependent.
yeah. And I was like, can you? And that was her homework for one session. Was like,
Yeah,
give
yeah.
me a strength
that
that
are
benefits you
I
more
like
than
that.
other people.
I like that a lot.
You
But-
look like you have your
Yeah, he
thinking
had a
face
thought.
on, John.
No, I did because I was thinking that as therapists, one of the gifts that we give, I think, is we see the potential in people, their strengths when they don't see it in themselves.
It really is.
Yeah.
We hold that a lot of times, and I find that I do that especially loudestly, oftentimes, honestly, if loudestly is a word,
No, sure.
That's
Why
a
not?
good.
in couples counseling. Right? I find that a lot of times, particularly because people are so hurting and so late on the draw when you're doing couples counseling, that you're right, John. Don't we hold that up for a person or hold that in hope for a person as we're working with them and then to begin providing that environment where they can contain that for themselves in time. Yeah, that's really true.
Exactly.
So we learn to cognitively reframe as we talk about with CBT, the thoughts and the critical things that we have. We use friendships for objective feedback. I think we mentioned that earlier. We check anxiety beliefs with other people, meaning that is a direct skill that I've kind of taught or suggested to people with anxiety. Like when you have your anxiety brain going on, ask your friends, set it up, let them know that you have that tendency, to have negative critique of self and check it out. Like, Victoria, I know this might be my anxiety, but I was thinking, this is what happened, and I thought, and that. Do you think I'm on something important? And they will tell you, no, or yeah, that's something you need to pay attention to. But usually it's going to be, no, that's not.
No.
That's setting up the use of relationships.
Yeah.
Validating in good relationships. I wrote the feel good file, thinking about things that you accomplished. Victoria, you're younger in the field. Do you have some things that you kept or accomplishments or school things or awards and this type of stuff? Have you built a professional file that way? I'm curious.
I guess maybe in a sense.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not.
I mean, like I was in the honor society for
CSI.
yeah. And so like I kept all my
Just to feel good.
I can't remember what position I held, but I held some position and I like kept all my stuff.
I got a
on it.
file with a letter somebody wrote me when I worked in the crisis hotline back in 1997, literally. John, do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I have one in my office.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'd love to check it out. We should celebrate them one day.
We should. We
Right?
But I
should.
think I also have stuff that's not work related. That
Right.
is like
Absolutely.
feel good stuff. Like
Yes.
I need to bring this in and show you. But I had this professor in college who gave out like this certificate. If you went to Lenore Ryan graduate school, you're gonna know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And this professor gave out like this certificate at the end of her classes that was like, I give you permission to like feel all these things and do like, it was a feel goody thing. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I have like held on
So this
to
was
that.
like an activity in class?
No, this was just something when you completed the class,
I
she
got you.
gave you
Okay.
like this thing.
Sort of a graduation
Yeah.
from my class. I
and
give you
so,
this.
but it was like, I give you permission to like enjoy the things in life, to be good at what you do. Like all these good things. I'm going to have to bring it in because I've kept it. And like when I'm feeling really down or something about like how I am in life or career wise.
Sounded like you got an important emotional message
Yeah.
that we are re-giving right now as we speak, as you're listening. Like, you have permission, and sometimes it's weird to think that, who the hell am I? You don't know who I am, and I don't know who you are. I'm talking to a microphone and shooting it around the airwaves around the world. But we need that emotional permission to allow ourselves to feel good about ourselves and to celebrate the things that we do well.
And I think that's why people come to therapy sometimes, is because they need
to
someone
reframe.
and they need someone to tell them, like, it is okay.
Yeah.
To feel your feelings, to do, to
to
love yourself, to
Yeah. I was just thinking, the only caveat that I would say is that if you're doing this to be a braggart or your own insecurity, that's different.
That is
that's
different.
Right, yes.
Space.
And
Very
that I want to make sure that people understand there is a difference.
Because we have narcissism and
this is authentic.
arrogance.
Yeah.
This is authentic self. Well, it's just affirmation.
Right. No, it's a good point. And
yeah, you do. That is a good point.
because that is dangerous when you start going the other route of aggressively thwarting others and pushing yourself out. And but you know what we know about those folks and are doing that. I mean, you know what we know, right?
Yeah.
They're struggling, hurt people, end up hurting people. Yeah. That's just what is natural. And so, that would be from a very different space. Guys, wait, we need to taxi in a little bit. Did we do a good job in sort of, how do you really help your clients build themselves up? Did we miss anything as we're journeying around in thought together there? Does anything else come up that are big, important parts?
Not that I could think of.
Well, I think in terms of a therapist, when you join with a client and it's authentic and it's real and it's just your bare self, your essential self. That is a wonderful time that a person can hear and know that they are not being judged.
Right.
And that's a judgment-free zone. And I think that's a kind of a sacred place to be in.
I tell my clients that all the time. This is a judgment-free zone.
It's funny. You're on point, John. I appreciate that greatly.
And this is not Planet Fitness.
Victoria.
Very true. Yes.
Being a younger therapist, I'm curious how you would receive this. It isn't Planet Fitness, right, John? I think oftentimes younger therapists fail to really, in kind of a depthy way, understand the value of what we're offering, in that the type of conversation, the type of environment that we create is literally something that our folks experience for the very first time in their entire life.
Yeah.
Like that
Beautiful.
validating, powerful, safe space where the focus then is on you and your component. Like you can't replicate it.
Yeah. Like one thing I do in session is I like to take off my shoes and I have a big chair in my office that I sit in, and I kind of curl up in my chair. Okay. And I think that showed, I had a client. I did that, and then I could tell she
modeled it for her.
She kind of relaxed more. She kicked off her shoes. She crossed her legs on the couch, and then she did that in the next session, and then
Dude,
and so,
that is fantastic.
And so and I love doing that because first of all, I mean, I'm comfortable that way too.
they don't want to smell my feet.
Now I usually make sure I have on socks,
Maybe not
but
quite that.
I think that it shows that hey, I'm open. This, I want you to feel comfortable here.
Yeah,
and I do that, and that's a nonverbal way of me saying, hey, sit back and get comfortable. We're about to get real intimate here, and I want you to feel comfortable in doing so.
You know what's cool about that, Victoria, is that younger therapists, honestly, I love that about you, and you are such a genuine person. So I really appreciate that. Yes. Please receive that as a.
I mean, because if I go to therapy, I'm getting comfortable.
Well, because you know what, younger therapists, especially older therapists as well. By the way, we feel like we have to be a certain way, or look a certain way, or sit a certain way. And I've had conversations with therapists where they're so afraid of not being proper and professional. I don't think there's anything unprofessional about. Appropriately, albeit.
In school, we had in part of our classes where I can remember this vividly. females, do not cross your legs. Do not cross your arms.
That
Do
sort of
not
thing.
wear flip flops.
Do not, do
Yeah.
this. Do not do that because you don't want to become. Crossing your arms shows that to the
Yeah.
client that you're
I
closed
remember
off. I'm
those
like,
things too.
okay,
Yeah.
well, no. And I will say, like, in the moment, I was like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. But now that I'm, like, practicing, I'm like,
No, it doesn't make sense.
no. Like,
No, they want to see you.
Yeah.
They don't
The
want to
genuine
see
you.
the genuine you, and that's the thing. Is the most important person in the world is the person you're looking at.
Being full focused
I
on
had
Be
someone
fully focused
this
on 'em.
week or last week tell me that they appreciated how open I was to other people's lifestyles. Because I said something about how, like, whatever, like, what
Culture
happens
and
when you
lifestyle.
die, like, whatever you believe. Like, I didn't specifically say when you go to heaven. Like, I left it open, and they said, I really appreciate, like, how accepting you are of, like, other people's cultures and like, being open. And I was like, yeah, because I mean, if I do therapy as if like how I would want to be treated if I was a client.
Right. Absolutely.
Like,
so
you know,
we
so,
need taxi and
anyways.
get out, guys. Listen, another cool Facebook contributor. Loving yourself should be repeated and repeated until it's a real habit, and I think that is super, super well said. Thank you for
Yeah,
adding
I like that.
to that. Listen, this is a hugely important component of your mental health, of your mental wellness, and I hope that as you've journeyed along with us for a little while here about understanding the barriers and how to beat the barriers and how then to be purposefully building yourself up, that you've gotten some of these things that you can really put into your lives, because we are all, as it is, human beings, and the human emotional experience, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, young or old, is hard. It's a hard, enduring, regular routine and chronic kind of component of finding the peace and acceptance that you have of yourself. It's the greatest thing that you give to yourself, and then generationally thereafter when you give and teach that to others. So this is a really important show. It's a great concept. I appreciate you riding with us, hanging with us, and get some things out of it so you can give to others. And we're going to begin to see you next week. Take
I really
care
enjoyed this session. Thanks,
did.
y'all.
and have a great week.
Nice
Bye.
seeing y'all.
See you soon.
Thank you.